Good morning. Good to see everybody. My lesson today is going to be brief because I want to leave some time at the end of our assembly to inform all of us about an extremely important issue. And since that matter is completely different than what my sermon is about this morning, I'll come back after our Lord's Supper before our closing song and closing prayer and make that special announcement. But for today, let me ask you to go ahead and turn in your New Testament to Luke chapter 7. Only twice does the New Testament record Jesus as being amazed at anyone. One of those occasions was when Jesus, after he had begun his public ministry, went back to his hometown where he was raised as a young boy all the way up until he began his ministry. A place where people knew him and knew his family well. And yet when Jesus began teaching, his own people said, well, isn't this just Joseph and Mary's boy, and aren't his brothers and sisters here? And basically they rejected Jesus. And at the end of that passage in Mark chapter 6, Jesus says he was amazed at their lack of faith. Now, the second occasion where Jesus was said to be amazed at someone is here in Luke chapter 7. And it also concerns people's faith, but here it's a man who, rather than a lack of faith, has great faith. So let's begin reading at verse 1 in Luke chapter 7. When Jesus had finished saying all this in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. There a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, "This man deserves to have you do this, because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue." So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. This is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, "I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel." And then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. Jesus observed some qualities in this Roman centurion that amazed him. And when you think about it, to say that someone amazed Jesus, that's quite a statement. So what was it about this centurion that Jesus was so amazed? Well, I think the answer to that question can be found in three different opinions that are given of this centurion in the very text that we've just read. The first of those opinions was the opinion of his neighbors, found in verses 2 through 5. Now here's a man who is not a Jew. He's probably what the Jews referred to as a God-fearer. He believed in the God of the Jews. He probably held to the principles and teachings of the Old Testament, as we would call it, but he had never actually become a convert to Judaism himself. He's a Roman soldier, but not just a lowly private in the Roman army. This is a centurion. This is a man who is the commanding officer over 100 well-trained, highly disciplined Roman soldiers. And he has a very highly valued servant in his own house who's so sick that the servant is about to die. The centurion, the passage said, had heard about Jesus. He had heard about his preaching. He had heard about his teaching. No doubt the centurion had heard about the healings and the miracles that Jesus had been performing. And so he thought, if I can just get Jesus to come to my house, I'm sure he can heal my servant. But there was a problem in his mind. He is, after all, not a Jew. He's a Roman soldier, a centurion, and he probably wondered, will Jesus even come into my house? Will he want anything to do with me. Maybe the centurion thought, well, Jesus will more quickly listen to a group of Jewish elders than he would to me. That's why he sends these Jewish elders to get Jesus rather than going himself to get Jesus. And so the Jewish leaders respond quickly to that request and eagerly to that request, and they go to Jesus and say, Jesus, you need to come because this man deserves to have you healing. See, this is a really most unusual event. It's unusual because normally the Jewish people had nothing but hatred for the Romans, especially hatred for the Roman military. And yet, here in this passage, they pay this Roman soldier a remarkable tribute. Not only because they are eagerly willing to go to Jesus on behalf of the soldier to bring him back to heal the centurion's servant, but also because they pay this soldier such high compliments. Tremendous tribute. The text says, they pleaded earnestly with Jesus, saying, this man deserves to have you do this. And why is that? Why does he deserve it? Well, they say because he loves our nation and he has built our synagogue. Now, there has to be more to this story than Luke tells us. But this is truly a remarkable story about a Roman centurion who loves the Jewish people and their nation. And what's even more astonishing is that this centurion would actually, out of his own pocket, pay for the construction of their worship place, their synagogue. It's obvious to the Jewish people in this area that this man, this centurion, genuinely cares about them, that he has served them in extraordinary ways, and his godly actions toward these Jewish people have won over the respect of these Jews, unlike probably was the case with any other Roman they knew. No wonder Jesus was amazed. So not only do we have the opinion of the Jews, let's look now at the centurion's opinion of himself. When the centurion realized that Jesus was, in fact, actually coming to his house, he sent friends to try to stop Jesus before he even got to the house, and he makes this statement, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not consider myself worthy to come to you. Now, isn't it interesting the difference in the opinion that the Jews had of the centurion and the opinion that he had of himself? And did you notice in verses 5 and 6, you have a word which repeats itself. It's the word deserve. The Jews say to Jesus, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and he's built our synagogue. But the centurion, when he looks at himself, he says, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. His neighbor's opinion of him obviously revealed his love and concern for them, and it revealed their respect and appreciation for the centurion. But his opinion of himself reveals his humility. So we've looked at the people's opinion of him. We've looked at his own opinion of himself. But Jesus also has an opinion of this centurion. That's found in verses 9 and 10. What's really mind-blowing is to hear Jesus' opinion. He pays the centurion one of the highest compliments that Jesus ever paid to anyone during his earthly ministry. And it wasn't a compliment spoken to one of the 12 apostles. It was not a compliment spoken to a Jewish leader. It was a compliment Jesus gave to a Gentile Roman soldier who was a centurion. Do you see how unusual that is? How odd that is? How out of the ordinary that is? Jesus said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith in Israel. If we could expand Jesus' words, if you'll allow me to do that, I think what Jesus is saying is, I've seen a lot of people who have faith. I've traveled all around Israel, and I've run into men and women who have demonstrated great faith in God. But what I'm telling you is, of all the people that I have seen who have great faith, I've not seen anybody, not even my own Jewish brethren, who have the kind of faith that this Gentile Roman centurion is describing. Now, what was it that the centurion did that caused Jesus to make that statement? What did he see in this soldier? Well, the answer to that's found in verses 7 and 8. And as we read it, again, I've emphasized this over and over, but you have to remember this man is a Roman centurion. He's the commanding officer over 100 well-trained, highly disciplined soldiers. And so the centurion says to Jesus these words, "Say the word, just say the word. Say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself," Jesus, "am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell one, go, and he goes. I say to another one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." Now, it's obvious that the soldier sees a parallel between his role as a commanding officer and Jesus' role as the Lord of the universe. Let's build on that a little bit. He saw himself in a position of military authority whose troops viewed him as the master of their lives. They obeyed his command without hesitation and without question. To the troops, the centurion's word was law. And in like manner, when the centurion thought about Jesus, he saw Jesus as being his master, his centurion, his leader. He even referred to Jesus with the word Lord, which is his acknowledgement that he knows that Jesus is his superior. So what this centurion is saying is this: Jesus, my soldiers do without question what I command because they know that I have authority that's been given to me by people even more powerful than me. My authority is backed up by the entire Roman government, and that's why they do what I say. Now here's the link. What he's saying between all those words is, Jesus, because I recognize your authority over sickness and death, you have the power and the ability to simply say, be healed, and that sickness will leave. All you got to do is say the word. I know what it means to have authority. I know what it means to be backed up by authority greater than my own. And I know what it means to give a command and my soldiers do exactly what I say. And I see in you a man who has authority backed up by God Himself. And if you say to sickness, be gone, it will be gone, no questions asked. Do you see why Jesus said about that man, I haven't found this kind of faith even among my own Jewish brethren? You see, I think ultimately what the soldier was saying is this: I recognize your authority not only over sickness and death, but I also recognize your authority over me. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do without hesitation. You are Lord, I am your troop. You give the command, and I will follow in obedience. Now, what's the application of this marvelous passage? I want to make 3 quick applications. Number 1, live your life in such a way that others see God living in you and through you. It is astounding that these Jews had such high regard for a Roman centurion. But when you stop and think about all that the centurion had done for those people, how he had demonstrated his genuine love and concern not only for them but for their whole nation, to the point that he didn't just say the words, he demonstrated it to the point that out of his own pocket he paid for the construction of their synagogue, then maybe it's not so surprising. I think of the words of Jesus in Matthew 5, in the great Sermon on the Mount as we call it. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and do what? Glorify your Father who is in heaven. And so here's a man who lets his light shine by the very way that he lives. These people, even though he has never become a Jew officially, they see godly behavior in his life. Do you live your life in such a way that your neighbors around you simply observe your way of living and they are impressed with your godly lifestyle. Here's the second application. Hold a proper opinion of yourself. Some people hold too high a view of themselves, and when they do, they become arrogant, conceited, self-centered, and selfish. The whole world revolves around them, they think. On the other hand, there are some people who have too low a view of themselves, and they're constantly condemning themselves and beating themselves up. And we have two extremes. People who think too highly of themselves, people who think too low of themselves, and neither one of those extremes are helpful to anyone. There is a way, though, for us to have a proper view and opinion of ourselves, and that is, number one, to recognize that we are sinners, that we make mistakes, that we disappoint God and we disappoint one another. We all have failures, we all have weaknesses, we all have shortcomings. And so that ought to give us a sense of humility. But on the other hand, we also are the objects, the recipients of the love of God, the mercy of God, the forgiveness of God. God loved us so much that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. So we are broken, fallen creatures who have been redeemed and loved because God has made us in His image and He wants us to spend eternity with Him. You see, that's that balanced view. And I see this centurion, and I see a man who has, I think, probably a pretty healthy self-image. He doesn't apologize for the fact that he's a Roman centurion. He knows he's a man of authority. He probably had great confidence in himself, but he also knows that because he's a sinner, he's not worthy to have the Lord come into his own house. And so as you view yourself, have a healthy, proper view and opinion of who you are. And here's the third principle. Place your faith in Christ alone. The centurion had authority, but he knew where his authority came from. He knew his authority was backed up by the power of Rome itself. He had authority because it had been given to him by someone with even more authority than he had. The centurion knew that Jesus had authority, and he knew where Jesus' authority came from. It came from God Himself. The centurion knew that Jesus was in direct submission to the God of all creation, the God of all authority, and that's why the centurion was willing to do whatever Jesus said. And so will you and will I, like the centurion, look to Jesus and say, Lord, I recognize your authority. I am your troop. When you command, without question and without hesitation, I will do exactly what you tell me to do. We all have the opportunity to obey that command and that call every day of our lives, all throughout every day of our lives. But this morning there may be someone here that has not responded and made confession of your sin, confession of your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, been buried with Him in baptism. We would love to assist you with that this morning. If you have that need or any other needs you want to express, come right now. Let's stand and let's sing together.